hey, Jackie, my quiz is not working because I'm running ads to it and nobody's taking it. How do you know if it's the ad that's not working? Maybe you're targeting the wrong people or there's something else, or is it the quiz that's not working?
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Interacts Grow podcast. I'm Jessie and I'm filling in for Jasmine today, and I'm here with Jackie and our very special guest, Melissa Litchfield. Melissa is a paid advertising and funnels expert, and we are super excited to have her on here today because we get a lot of questions about ads with quizzes and pretty much just how you can set them up, how you can run them. And she's been a partner with Interact for a while now. If you wanted to introduce yourself a little bit, Melissa, and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And technically, this is my second time on the podcast, but I'm super excited to kind of chat and dive deeper into ads and quiz funnels. But yeah, I am basically the owner and founder of a digital advertising agency that specializes in paid traffic and strategic profitable funnels for online entrepreneurs and service providers. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Super cool. Yeah, I've actually seen you on Instagram sharing about like ads that you've run for clients with quizzes. And I think that's kind of how we first connected on Instagram. And ever since then, I was like, oh, like if we have any questions about ads or if our audience or customers has questions, we should definitely run to Melissa because she knows what she's doing.
Yeah. And I feel like 2022 might have been like the height of quizzes. I felt like a lot of my clients were doing quiz funnels that year. We even built a couple quiz funnels on Try Interact. So yeah, I'm definitely well versed in like the back end of things, running ads to it, figuring out tracking, how to kind of set up the different quiz funnels inside of Interact. So that way you have like one for organic, one for paid. So I'm sure we'll chat a lot more about that too.
Melissa, is there a certain place to start when thinking about running an ad to a quiz? Like, is there a certain order that we should go in, or should we just start asking you the most asked questions that we get from our customers?
We could start there. I just to quickly answer your question about like where to start, where to begin with. I think a good funnel audit would be probably the best like option to start with prior to just like racing to ads manager and putting up an ad. You really want to make sure that you have, the correct amount of pages that you need, right? For tracking after each quiz result is shown to a lead, you want to make sure that you have appropriate like tagging set up, and integrated accurately with your email service provider. And you also want to test the quiz funnel. I can't like emphasize how important that is. Please test your quiz funnel to make sure that it is firing the tracking, appropriately, redirecting to the correct page, getting that first email confirmation. There's so many different like funnel pieces, that is kind of like associated with the quiz funnel itself. So
Melissa, something that we get asked often is with ad tracking systems. So should you be looking elsewhere at ad tracking, or are you looking within Interact, like within Interact Analytics? You talked about like setting up the right number of pages. So like let's dive into that first, I guess.
yeah, well, depending on how many results you have within the quiz and how you want to set up your funnel, I mean, you can kind of go two different ways, right? You can choose to like host all your quiz result pages inside of Interact, or you can choose the option to redirect each individual quiz result to a dedicated page on your website, right? I personally like the dedicated page only because I have more flexibility in design. Nothing against Try Interact, but I think it's like a great option, right? If you're brand new, you want to just get the quiz funnel up like quickly to start driving organic traffic through it. But I do like if you're going to build a completely like full funnel build for a quiz and you're driving leads to an actual paid offer, that's when I love to use like a dedicated page on your website. So that way you can implement like a tripwire or, a checkout page. So you just have a little bit more design flexibility, I guess, and like funnel flexibility in terms of like offer and where they go next. If you basically redirect everybody to like your own page, on your domain.
Mm-hmm. And just for anybody listening, yeah, go ahead, Jesse.
I was just say, I think we usually recommend people to redirect as much as possible because even from there, I'm sure if you're running ads, you can get more info, how long people are staying on that page, where they're clicking to next. So that sounds like straight in line with what we've been hearing too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Well, I was going to say, unless you guys want to roll out a heat map function in the future,
Ooh.
I think the benefit, right, is to be able to, and integrate any sort of like widget or software or additional platform on your own domain because you have more control with like, codes and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. And I was just going to high level, like the tech setup of that is once you have your quiz built in Interact, you're using the embed code function to embed the front. Well, I guess you could either create your own quiz cover, right? And then turn off the Interact quiz cover, but you're essentially embedding your quiz onto a domain that you own or a landing page that you want. And then same thing, you're redirecting after they've answered the quiz questions, you're redirecting to the specific URL that you've built the quiz results on so that it's not staying within Interact.
correct. Yeah. So, I mean, there is a direct integration, right, with the Meta Pixel and also the GA4 integration, which was newly released. But I think a good practice is to try to get the traffic as much as possible back to your website because that's essentially the real estate that you own, right?
Totally.
So, I mean, there is tracking integrated already with Try Interact, so you don't have to necessarily need to use, your own website pages, but I think it's a good habit to get in to kind of like train your traffic, right? To like go to the website, go to this page, like view it, click here, click there. So that we can start tracking that type of behavior on, those pages as well.
Mm-hmm. Is there a way to tell? I think the number one question I get asked is, hey, Jackie, my quiz is not working because I'm running ads to it and nobody's taking it. How do you know if it's the ad that's not working? Maybe you're targeting the wrong people or there's something else. Or is it the quiz that's not working? What would you say to somebody who's struggling with that?
Yeah, well, I guess you could one double check if you have the correct optimization set up, right? So for creating a ad campaign inside of Meta, you have a couple different options, right? For a campaign objective, like what is your end goal here? And if you're driving traffic to a quiz, you ultimately do want them to take action, right? You want them to perform a certain action, leave the ad, and then further enter the information. And that is, what we call a lead in marketing. So we're acquiring the lead by in exchange, giving them these quiz results. And maybe there's more value information on the results page, which I highly recommend. But from that specific action, like you want to essentially convert as many clicks or views from your page as possible. So that kind of brings us back to the correct campaign objective if you are obviously wanting leads, right? So you want to make sure you pick a lead campaign objective. So it used to be called a conversion objective. Now they've kind of separated leads and sales out. So it's like very clear, right? It's very clearly defined when you set up your ad. So I guess I would say that's like the one thing to double check, right? Make sure you're not driving traffic because you're kind of like telling Meta, okay, I want you to find other people that will just perform a click. So that's essentially a traffic objective versus, okay, I want you to find people that are actually going to opt in and give me their name and email. So I would say look at that first. And then I would also look to see how many link clicks are you actually getting from the ad, right? Because then it could be like a quiz title issue, right? Or it's not like enticing enough. Maybe it's a little too basic, or maybe there's like 50 other quizzes out there with the same title. So that would be probably my top two areas to look at, because more likely than not, people are probably clicking to the ad, but they don't really see the benefit, right, to taking the actual quiz. Like, how is it actually going to benefit them? What is the small, tiny little win that they are basically going to see, right, after taking the quiz?
I also feel like I've heard a lot of people when they start running ads is that, they're getting a lot of reach and like maybe they're getting some clicks. But I'm wondering, do you know when you're getting a lot of reach and you're not getting a lot of engagement, it could be like the quiz title. Could it also be that, they've set too large of a net for their audience size or like they haven't targeted enough?
It could sorry, it could possibly be that, but I have a feeling that with that type of scenario, they probably have the wrong objective, right? They're probably optimizing their ad for reach or engagement when they want to be optimizing for leads. So if it is an audience issue, right, and you're not seeing any conversions, like you're seeing clicks and whatnot, I would look at the click-through rate. That's going to give you like a little indication of, okay, is my creative resonating with the people that we are targeting, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, those are a couple of different areas to look at. But yeah,
And would
CTR.
that mean, Melissa, would that mean if, like, let's say you're, like Jesse was saying, you're seeing a lot of clicks, but then they're not going through your quiz. If you're saying, look at your click-through rate, is it just to see like, hey, these people are clicking on the ad, so like that must mean the creative is good, but they're not taking the quiz. Therefore, I know the ad type is probably wrong because they're interested, therefore they're clicking, or is that the wrong assumption?
There's a couple different clicks. Yeah. So there's a metric that's called clicks, parentheses all. And that basically means everyone that like looked at the ad, right? They either clicked learn more or see more, they've expanded the ad, or maybe they looked at the comments. So that's your click metric for CTR, but then they have a link CTR metric, which is the link clicks, right? The link click through rate. So you kind of want to look for both of those. So one, you want to be stopping the scroll, right? That's your clicks like CTR metric. But then you also want to take it a step further and have them click through, right? It's one thing to stop the scroll, but if you're not getting them to click through to the actual quiz, then you kind of lost them, right? And you're probably losing a lot of money. So look at those two metrics. I usually look for like a 2-to-1 ratio. So example, if the overall CTR is a 2%, ideally you'd want the link CTR to be half of that. So like 1%. So yeah, I'd look at that first, but more than likely, if you're getting clicks, right, or link clicks all the way to the page, but you're not seeing conversions or leads, right, taking the actual quiz, it's probably the title and like whatever copy is on that quiz page. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I personally have not set up a quiz ad before, but I didn't know that it like clicking on the comments section or expanding that even counts as clicks because I do that often when I see ads. So that's super interesting. So
Yeah,
that
it's definitely a good metric to look at because it's showing interest, right? It's
yeah.
showing that you are reaching people that are interested in the copy and the creative and what you have to say in the ad. But yeah, take it a step further. And obviously, we want link clicks, right? So that's usually where like the headlines kind of come into play.
That's super interesting.
Is there a difference in terms of the audience size or like the reach that you want the ad to have for somebody who is a business who is solely online, right? So you can help really anybody in the world versus
Right.
somebody who, let's say, is a photographer and they're limited to a specific area. We had a quiz, we had like an ads course, so to speak, that we used. And in there, I learned the audience size for a conversion ad could be like 1 to 5 million. But then a photographer who's from maybe a smaller town or region who only services 50,000 people maximum, what is that? What does that person do? Like, what should they look at or do differently?
Yeah, well, a couple different caveats, right? And I'll probably play devil's advocate here because I've seen both convert, right? Large audiences anywhere from like 1 to 5 million plus. And I've also seen small audiences convert. So I really think it depends on like the industry and the niche that you're in, plus the actual like title of the quiz. Like how enticing is it that it really draws in people and they're like, oh my God, I like really want to know my results, type of thing. Um, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but but yeah, so what it really comes down to is the audience big enough that it reaches at least like 1,000 people in a given day? And ads manager will tell you that on the ad set level. So um, I think the biggest like sign is that if the audience is too small, usually you'll see that the ad set or the ad campaign itself is just not spending money. So, I mean, take that with a grain of salt. I don't want to say that like, a blanket statement, the audience size has to be this or this. I really don't know to test. So sometimes it helps to just add in additional interests that are related to, say that photographer that's local, right? Maybe you can expand like the local targeting a little bit. Or honestly, for like local photographers, I may suggest that maybe Google Ads would be a better option for them, right? So you just kind of have to think like, okay, where your potential audience, like where do they live? Could it be anywhere in the US? Or are you kind of limited to like a brick and mortar type of like belly to belly service? So I may like my recommendations of like where you should spend your ad dollars may differ depending on the type of services that you provide.
That's super. I also just thinking about this, what if an ad is performing really well, you're getting a lot of clicks, you're getting a lot of leads on your quiz. Is there kind of a way to know if those are going to be quality leads? Or have you seen like ads collecting a lot of leads that, don't ever like really turn into sales? Is there a way to kind of like see that
Mhm.
early on, or do you have to run it for a while and, put them through a sales funnel? I'm curious about that.
Definitely have to put them through some sort of like nurture sequence and then a sales funnel, right? Because those more than likely your leads that are coming into a quiz are mostly cold leads, right? They don't know you yet. They're brand new to you. This was like the first time getting to know you or interacting with you. And to pitch them right away, depending on how much it is, right? It's more than likely probably not going to convert because of a few different factors. So I would say if your product is more like a low ticket offer, like something below $45, you could test that as like a tripwire after they take the quiz. But if you're trying to get them to convert into a high ticket offer, right? Like say you're a photographer and your fees are like $3,000 for an event, probably need to put them into a nurture sequence, right? So if there's any photographers listening, you should really put them into a nurture sequence after the quiz and then drive them to book a call with you because I mean most people want to learn more about those type of services and get on a phone call with somebody prior to signing a contract and forking over five figures or something like that. So
That makes
That's what
sense.
sense.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you have a take on, I feel like we talked about this maybe with Josh or maybe when we had the quiz collective. What do you say to people who, what am I trying to say? I guess, what are your thoughts on testing the funnel organically, making sure it works, and then running an ad versus just going straight to ads? Is there like a right or wrong way to do that?
100%. I will say if you have the audience to push
Okay.
to get organic traffic to come through the funnel before pushing paid traffic, 100% I would recommend that. Yeah. And the client that we did build a quiz funnel on Try Interact with in, I think it was 2022, I did recommend her push organic traffic through that. And there was a series of, low ticket offers within that funnel. So that was kind of like one of the metrics that I was looking for. Like, okay, what are the conversion rates? Like, what are the email open rates? What are the email click through rates? Are we getting enough people from the emails to actually even visit that sales page for that, low ticket thing? So yeah, organic traffic is always like the best bet to kind of test to see how it converts. It will honestly give you a lot of insight, a lot of data, and in case you need to tweak something before running paid traffic to it.
Yeah.
It sounds like I think a lot of our customers that want to set up ads and start running them, I think a lot of them deal with low organic traffic, so jumping into it is hard. What would you kind of recommend as best practices for someone who doesn't have a lot of organic traffic?
Yeah. I would say there's a couple other like marketing avenues that you can take, right? You could be a part of a virtual summit and kind of use your quiz as like a lead gen, right? And usually with virtual summits, you're at least getting like 200 to 300 potential leads that could opt into your lead magnet. You could also share it inside of Facebook group, right? So I feel like people that don't have a large organic following themselves could also tap into other people's audiences. So don't feel like your only option is ads. There's other avenues. So I think you could get creative, right? Think outside the box. How can you drive as much traffic as possible without, like your only option is paid traffic type of thing?
Yeah. I think that's a good
We
note.
know that quizzes convert higher. For somebody who doesn't have the organic reach at this point, who's trying to grow, would you encourage them to use a quiz versus a different lead magnet, opt-in, or like maybe just overall strategy to try to attract more people and build value and share what they want to share?
You know what? Honestly, it comes down to the actual quiz itself, right?
Totally.
Because I do see, lead magnets convert perfectly fine. And I've seen some quizzes that don't convert as well. So I think it really comes down to like the type of quiz it is, the type of industry you're in, and the type of questions that you're asking, right? Because I've seen some questions that are kind of pretty basic, and I don't want to be rude, but like boring. If the
Mhm.
quiz is boring to take, it's probably not going to result in any sort of like conversion metric.
Yeah. So really just getting clear on who it is that you're talking to, why you want to talk to them. Because even an ebook, right, that's written on a topic that's not in line with who you're chatting with is not going to convert either.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I'm not going to say everybody does this, but if you're not utilizing like the results page to provide them more information around why they got the type of results they had, and giving them some sort of solution, right, to solve that issue as it pertains to that quiz result. I mean, that's one missed opportunity, right? And then there's several other opportunities that you can still pitch them within your email sequence, right? But yeah, so lots of different factors, right? With funnels and quizzes in general. Lots of things to look at in terms of like, oh, is this quiz converting, or are we losing a lot of people, right? On question 8, I think sometimes quizzes can be so long. And especially if
Mhm.
you're running paid traffic to something, I feel like 8 or less questions is necessary, right? Because people have a short attention span. So,
Yeah. And when you're working with 8 or less, we even say 6 or less sometimes, every question has to be good. It can't be like boring, like, you know,
yeah.
yeah, no fluff. That's hard.
Yeah. So, I mean, some people want to collect as much information as possible, which I get that. But in terms of keeping, people sustained all the way through the end and to prevent like a massive drop off rate, the less questions, the better. But yeah, it really comes down to like the type of question, right? And also the results, like what sort of information are you giving them on the results page?
When does the cost per click come into play? I think a lot of people want to run ads to quizzes because they hear that the cost per click is going to be much lower, or they've seen examples where it can be much lower. When do you really start looking at that metric of like, okay, the funnel is working, I'm getting people to the right place, they're taking this quiz. Now, how do I reduce the amount that I'm paying to get more people to do that?
Right. Yeah. The cost per click will basically tie into like the creative that you're testing as well, right? So I would also look at like the CTR, link CTR. Like, are you getting a high percentage there? More than likely, that will usually help the cost per click. But also look at the cost per lead, right? How much is it basically costing you to acquire that person's name and email address? And then optimizing your ad. I think a lot of people kind of set it up and forget about it, right? So if you want to optimize and lower the cost per click and also the cost per lead, you should be looking at the ads and looking at the different metrics to see, okay, how can I improve, as many or getting people, as many people as I can, right, to the landing page. So that way they actually start the quiz and take it. So yeah.
Do you think it's easier to, like, for someone who's new to ads, is it easier for them to start with advertising on Meta versus Google?
I guess it depends how much time you have to dedicate to learning it, right? I wouldn't say like Google is any less complicated than Meta, but I do feel like majority of the advertising platforms, at least for the social ones, do mimic ads manager, like Meta ads manager. So for instance, if you learn Meta ads and then you want to go to TikTok, like, I mean, it looks very similar. So I feel like if you do learn Meta ads manager, at least you're set up for some success because you'll know how to pretty much finagle it in any other platform.
Carries over. That's good to know. We actually were testing running ads, I think last year, like toward the end of the year, and we were testing out running them in different languages to different countries. And that was definitely a learning curve for us, not only translating our copy into different languages, but our result pages and
Oh,
everything. And I just remember being in analytics and being like, oh my goodness, there's so much to learn and so many different things to set up and optimize that I was like, this is why people hire things for this. This is a lot for, a solopreneur to, and so many different
Yeah.
tutorials online. Like it was just so much. And even then when it's like, oh, can we optimize it more? You don't even know like what to touch to optimize it, So it's always,
Right.
it seems
Yeah.
like a lot.
I know. And so speaking of like, small business owners with like a small budget, for marketing, sometimes it is beneficial if you can schedule like a one-on-one call or a consultation with an ad expert. So that way you just like have that peace of mind, like, okay, the tracking is set up appropriately. Like, is everything redirecting the correct way? Are all of the emails set up correctly? Like, are they going to send on the right day or the right wait time? So sometimes it helps to just, book a consultation with somebody, get like an expert to review the funnel for you, just so you have like a peace of mind. So that way when you do set up the ads, okay, everything is looking good.
Did the
But yeah, running it on your own it is overwhelming. I'm not going to lie. This is why people pay me. And it literally is, built an agency around it. So yeah, it's not for the weak for sure.
Also, Melissa, there's something you want to speak to at GA4 with GA4 that makes sense to connect with ads?
I could just briefly touch, like, make sure you integrate GA4 with your quiz if, you want some like additional tracking on top of Meta Ads Manager. Cause I mean, it is well known that like Ads Manager is not 100% accurate all the time. So have that like additional sort of measure, in the back end, I think it's good protocol, especially if you are investing so much of your money, on ads already. Might as well have the extra tracking, installed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There are some like third party tracking software that like people rave about, but just from personal experience, they're not accurate either. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but like nothing is perfect. So that's why I tell all my clients, like, let's separate, like duplicate the quiz, have, you guys have tags now in the software. You can tag one quiz to be organic, one to be ads. Also add a tag on the back end of your email marketing software for paid traffic. So that way, the paid tag follows them through the funnel. So, and it's good to like separate the results too. So that way you can clearly see, okay, 5 leads came into the quiz funnel yesterday. Like, what is Meta Ads Manager saying?
Yeah. So if you're running ads on Meta and Google and you have your quiz on your website, you should have 3 separate quizzes.
Well, for Google, I would say that's not a big issue because more than likely you're sending people just to like your website page, right? So they're probably going to be clicking around. People that use Google just have a different search intent, right? They have a different intent versus Meta ads. You're kind of like interrupting their day, right? People who
Yeah.
are typing into Google, they're searching for a specific thing. So if they happen to come to your website and opt in, you can utilize like UTM parameters, right, within like your Google ads. So that way you know exactly like in Google Analytics for like who is coming from the Google ads, right? Because that first initial link is going to be, has like a parameter attached to it. But I do like having the separate quizzes inside of Try Interact that's clearly labeled from organic to Meta, because for most of my clients, right, they already have an existing audience. So it's usually like a flood of organic people and then like a trickle, like a constant trickle, because of the ads are constantly running. So it's nice to see those differentiators too, like between, like the conversion rate or the start to completion rate in comparison to like paid and organic. So it's always nice to see like, oh, this is like how the paid version of the quiz is converting versus organic.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah.
And I
really
just
nice.
want to mention this too. When we say have multiple quizzes, they're just duplicated quizzes within your Interact account. So it's really just the same quiz. You're making one quiz, but you're duplicating it and tagging it in Interact, saying this one is on my website, so it's organic, and this one is on Meta or Google Ads or wherever you might be running ads to it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Although I will say one thing is like, I noticed when you duplicate a quiz, you just have to like reintegrate everything. Like just kind of like double check the redirects, because I did that one time and I didn't check and I was like, oh, the tags are
Yes, good point. Melissa, I'll add you to my feature request card where we've requested that specific thing. When we duplicate, can it just stay connected? But yeah, that's a really good point.
Carry over, please, too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When you're running the ad, especially when you're running the ad because you're paying to do that, make sure that you're testing the quiz and the flow. And that, I mean, you said this in the beginning, Melissa, your pages are set up properly so that you're going from the quiz cover through the questions to the right result. They're able to subscribe. Because I've seen a handful of quizzes too that they weren't fully connected, and or even organically, they shared them out and it got a ton of views, they got a ton of completions, but they got no leads because they just didn't test the email function. It wasn't published properly. So very good call out there.
Yeah. That has happened to one of my clients too on the organic side as well. And she was bummed because she's like, oh my God, I had, 100 people like complete the quiz, but where are the leads?
Oh no.
The integration.
But that's a good organic test, right? Like that must mean her funnel worked if that many people got to the result page. So something that she could potentially start running ads to with that sort of reinforcement.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
This kind of brought to thought, just one more thought is, do you think if you're running an ad with a quiz, should you have the skip button enabled or disabled?
Good one.
Like, people get to skip to get to the result, or should you force the opt-in?
Force the opt-in, yeah. Because then there's, what incentive do they have to actually opt in if they already have the results?
Yeah.
That may be controversial to other people, but again, if you're running ads and you're paying for people to potentially, basically opt into your email list, yeah, you kind of want to collect their email before you show them the results, because then they just have no further incentive to opt in from there.
Yeah.
Are there any, I have one last question. I always do this. One last thing. Are there any trends that people should be looking for, Melissa? So like time of year that you run an ad, certain keywords that you should try targeting. And maybe I'm thinking, because obviously this could be very different based on your industry, your niche and all of that. But like the Super Bowl is coming up. Is that a good or bad time? New Year's just happened. So like, are there certain trends people should be paying attention to, or timelines when it comes to running ads that could help them even more?
Honestly, there is no like set time. I would say Q4 is usually, more expensive than any other quarter just because you have everybody advertising at that same time. But for lead gen, I don't tell my clients to turn off their ads. Like lead gen is fine. We may scale back ad spend, but we never completely turn off ads in Q4. Yeah, I honestly say there really is no like, good time, bad time. And again, it depends on your niche. Like some businesses say they're super slow in the summer. And then, my winters are usually pretty slow, but like this January, I had the busiest January ever. So yeah, I feel like it just depends. But yeah, for a quiz, I feel like the best quizzes, and you can let me know if what you see on your end, but the themed ones get the best interaction, right? So like I've seen like a Friends themed sort of quiz, and I've seen like traffic superpower quiz, right? Where they made like each result like related back to like a superhero power or something. So I feel like if you can kind of theme it and relate it back to the industry you're in and make it more engaging, you're more than likely going to see more people, convert from that quiz.
Yeah, I like that. And I would agree with you. I think that's like the BuzzFeed quizzes that we all know and love, right? Like they're the trendy things, but they will not work if it's too far removed from your business. If you're trying too hard to be too clever to make that connection of like which Friends character are you, but it has no relation back to the thing that you're going to support them with, that's when those types of quizzes fail. So I totally agree that you can use BuzzFeed style quizzes to your advantage, but just make sure it makes sense for your business.
Right, yeah. And to your whole like what Friends personality you are, I feel like those are so overdone, right? But if you can maybe tie in the quiz question and relate it back to a specific character, or maybe like that type of personality they have, then I feel like that's fine. But yeah, the whole like, what type of entrepreneur you are. It's just kind of like played out,
Well, Jackie, do you have any final questions for Melissa based on anything we've gotten in?
No, I guess just Melissa, any final words or thoughts or comments, best practices that you want to share with everybody listening before we go?
Gosh, I feel like we covered so much. But yeah, I mean, I feel like most people may feel like it seems overwhelming, right? Daunting, but like take the baby steps, maybe one day work on the quiz questions and the next day work on making the quiz questions pretty with like a GIF or something, So like just start small and eventually you will have your quiz. But yeah, it is a lot of steps. So I feel like better to take your time and make sure it's set up right versus, rushing it and putting out like, a poor quality quiz. So
Love that.
That's actually a great segue into we're finally announcing officially Interact AI is available. And so that's a great way for anybody who's wanting to make a really stellar quiz to get started. So it's probably not going to be like the quiz that you get back from AI isn't going to be the final one that you're going to want to run ads to, but it's a great way to get started based on your website, based on your content that you've already written, to have a quiz written for you in your voice and then optimize it with, like Melissa said, can you relate that to friends' characters if that's what relates to your audience? What is it that you need to know about these people? What do they want to know about themselves? And then making sure they get to the right result. And then you have something that much faster that you can start running an ad to or sharing organically, whichever you decide to do.
Love that. And Melissa, where can our audience find you if they want to learn more or just get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm on Threads and Instagram. I know we talked about Threads earlier. Same handle, Litchfield Media. I'm also on TikTok, same handle as well, but I've been thoroughly loving Threads, so you'll probably find me there. Or you can visit our website, litchfieldmedia.org.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Melissa. And for our listeners, if you have any questions about ads, let us know. Drop comments on our YouTube, anywhere else. Write us in at contact@tryinteract.com. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa.